Now, I know this brand for quite some time, and I know they've been around for over, I think it's over 30 years, manufacturing some outstanding power supplies, and I can definitely say that from what I heard so far in those, I wouldn't say 30 years because I wasn't building PCs for 30 years, but let's say 20 years plus something similar to that, is always a positive feedback regarding, well, their power supplies. But today we're not going to talk about it, even though we do have one right here and I'm going to mention it to give you some information about it. Today we're going to actually go into details about this case right here. This is SuperFlower ZILLION M705. This is a MIDI tower case that can actually support quite an interesting configuration of fans and everything else. So what's it all about when we're talking about this case? When we take a closer look of the interior, it might be quite familiar, and we actually covered something quite similar to this one, and it was Enermax's Marble Shell MS31. The interior is definitely quite identical, I would say, and quite identical mistakes, I would say, as well, because it's not a flaw where you would say, oh my god, I'm not going to buy this case because it's so, I don't know, wrong, or there are loads of flaws or something similar to that. No, it's nothing like that. It's just bits and pieces that I think in the R&D or just the manufacturing process or just assembling the case, I would say, at the end and placing it inside the box to ship it out. That's the final process that they should have taken a look at it a bit. So what's it all about? And I did mention that in the Enermax video as well, and I'm going to mention that here as well, just so you know. So the front panel is fully meshed and quite ventilated, I would say. But that's not the thing. That's not the whole point what I'm trying to make here. The thing is, it has a quite nice distance from the inner part of the chassis where you mount your fans or your radiator. And what they did, they mounted the fans on the inner part of the chassis. Now, that wouldn't be a problem if this configuration wasn't as it is. So you have a possibility to mount two 120mm fans on the side next to the motherboard, and this is only possible if you go with an ATX motherboard. If you go with an EATX motherboard such as I did, you have to reroute the 24-pin through there. So you lose those two 120mm fans. It could be manageable, but I wouldn't risk it just because the motherboard pins at the back might tear up your 24-pin. But that's a completely different story, and I don't take this as a negative part of the case. This is a completely different story, right? Regardless of that. Now, those front fans block those side fans, and they shorten the thickness, the length of the GPU. So if you have enough space from the front panel to the inner part of the chassis, why not place them on the outside of the chassis? Time up from the inner part, and you have loads of space inside the case for the GPU, for the side fans, and most importantly, what you'll notice is that the cable management is totally catastrophic in the sense when the fans are as they were, right? So I gave myself some time to actually build this PC and to show you guys that it's not that terrible in terms of you can manage it yourself. I know it's a bit frustrating that you have to do all the work, but after all, you are building yourself a PC, not for anybody else. So if you do something for yourself, you might as well go that extra length and make it perfect. So what I did is, I placed the fans on front. Automatically, you get three 120mm addressable RGB fans and one at the rear. Now, I removed it because I wanted to go with mega cool fans on the bottom part of the, well, on the top part of the power supply shroud, here at the rear and three at the top. And this kind of explains everything, right? Because inside this case, you can go with up to 11 120mm fans, 3 on the front, 3 on top, 1 at the rear, 2 at the power supply shroud, and 2 at the side, which can create an outstanding airflow. But let's continue on the cable management, right? When you place the fans on the front, you have nice openings on the side to reroute the cables. You push them on the side, use zip ties and everything similar to that, and then you have even additional nice space to place the fans here on the side. And this brings us to the point where you can reroute the cables quite nicely, do a perfect cable management, and you can see that from a close-up. And this is the thing where you could actually not benefit, but create something of your own and give it a nice shine. That's it. That's the only, well, not a downside, but a bit work more for a budget case, which is a budget case. But then again, it's quite a cool case. When we're talking about the fan support, you can go up to 3120 on front or 3140 on front. You can go on top 3120 or 2140, rear one, and on side 2120. As well as you can go on two on the power supply shroud, revert them, and actually mega cool look, outstanding if you reverse them, because they don't have a reverse blade, but they still look quite outstanding, and they hide the cable, and you can daisy chain them quite easily, which is quite cool because they look amazing. And this is why I went with this color scheme, with this build, to give it more thematical color approach, because of the fans and to fit everything nicely. Now, when we go to the radiator support, 240, 280 and 360 on the front, top the same configuration, so 240, 280 or 360, and at the rear you could go with 120. Maximum GPU length 400 millimeters, maximum CPU cooler height 165 millimeters, and maximum PSU length is 220. Front panel I/O has Type-C port, 2 USB 3.0, 2 3.5 millimeter jacks, audio and microphone, and you have power on button and an LED button. I'll get to that quite quickly. Fits up to two 2.5 inch SSDs and two 3.5 inch hard drives. And when mentioning, going back to the LED button on the top, at the back you have a controller which gives you an option to control the addressable RGB, and, well, basically not control, it gives you an option to connect more addressable RGB headers and more PWM headers. And this is really cool because you connect everything to your motherboard, and you have an option to control it either with motherboard software or with BIOS when we're talking about PWM. So all in all, what I can say is that the case is great. It has a tempered glass that slides on the side. It doesn't have that sort of a keychain look-alike, but it has some sort of a small cloth, or I don't know how to say this or to explain it to you guys, but it, as you can see, it's quite nicely pulled out. It's really cool. It's not that thick steel and it's not that thick tempered glass, but we're talking about $79 case that comes with 4 addressable RGB 120 fans pre-installed, loads of possibilities when we're talking about fans in general to place inside, long GPUs, EATX motherboard, quite nice possibility for cable management, rerouting at the back, giving you an option to, of course, fix the initial problem with cable management and make it your own, make it like look quite nice and outstanding. Now, you might think, why did I use an air cooler here? I did test the standard 360 AIO, and I use this one because for this one I have something else in mind. But regarding that, I have 2 benchmarks, so this CPU cooler and I have the 360. Of course, there won't be too much varieties when we're talking about the Enermax MS31 and the ZILLION M705, because they're both great ventilated cases. So there's just going to be small instances, small differences, and that will be all. So mentioning that, let's check this out. Hyper 212 from Cooler Master here, cooling AMD Ryzen 9 7900X3D. And for the graphic card, we have MSI RTX 4080 Gaming X Trio. CPU with Hyper 212 went up to 79 degrees Celsius, which isn't a lot. But when you take into consideration that the clock speed went down to 4600 MHz, this only reflects the cooler. And the GPU went up to 68. Now, with the Lickmax Flow 360 that I used on the same AMD Ryzen 9 7900X3D, CPU did go above and went up to 82, but the clock speed went up to 4875, and you'll notice the difference when we access the Cinebench scores. And the GPU went up to 66. I don't know if there's a reason for lower GPU temperatures, but okay, regardless of that. So let's go to the Cinebench R23. Now, first I'm going to mention the Hyper 212 scores with this case, and then I'm going to mention the 360 AIO inside this case, because I really want to give you the difference, right? So 88 degrees throughout the whole benchmarks with Hyper 212. The clock speeds were mostly around 4775, and it started with, now this is a shocker, 25,169, and then it eventually goes above 200, so 25 1212. In every aspect here, I would say an average is 25,190. And then we go with the 360 radiator. Specifically, this Lickmax Flow has a thicker radiator, so it kind of does perform much better than your regular radiator. And I did say it has a quite nice pump and everything else. You have the review, you can check that out additionally. But check this out. So the thermal started 86 and then they lowered down to 83 degrees. So that's 5 degrees lower than on Hyper 212. And I'm not saying this shockingly because we're talking about a 4 heat pipe slim passive heatsink here on the Hyper 212. I'm just mentioning facts. So then we go to the clock speeds. 4950 to 4975. Now you can already here see that the CPU is working 200 megahertz better. And when we're talking about scores, it starts at 26,203 and eventually starts building up to 26,500. So this is 1,300 Cinebench points better when we're talking about Hyper 212 and 360. But regardless of that, I wanted to show you that this case with the airflow performs outstanding. It's a budget case, as I said, $80, but you can really mount it and really make it look quite nice. The Mega Cool fans are really outstanding because, first of all, they don't have RGB. And I'm not saying that as a positive or a negative thing, but they're more performance fans and they look quite nice even though they don't have RGB. And this is really cool. And then we have this power supply. This is LEDX 780 Plus Gold 1300 watts. Now, of course, I don't need 1300 watts here, but as you already noticed, if you're watching regularly my videos, that I like to build a case or whatever I do with all the products from one manufacturer. So yeah, I really wanted to go with the fans. I really wanted to go with the power supply, and the case altogether really looks nice and pairs up quite nicely. So all in all, I would say it's almost the same thing. It is the same thing as the Enermax Marble Shell MS31, but I have nothing against that case and I have nothing against this case, except for maybe creating what I did with the front triple fans, placing them on front. You can always change the position of the dust filter from the front to the back. You have another magnetic dust filter at the top and you have additional dust filter here beneath the power supply. So yeah, covers everything. I think it's a wonderful case. Nice price, 3 fans, quite cool. And they're not loud, so that's another positive green tick, I would say, for such a case. The cool thing also, it has a SuperFlower logo on top with some lines around it. And here's the catch, you have to connect it to a Molex connector. Now, I haven't seen Molex for quite some time, I do have to say, but if you want it to light up in blue, you can do that and connect it with Molex, and yeah, there's that. That's all there is to it, guys. Quite satisfied with the case in terms of the budget per performance ratio and everything that you get right here. And because of that, I'll place the links in the description for the ZILLION M705. LEDX 7 1300 watts 80 plus gold, and of course triple pack of these outstanding Mega Cool 120mm PWM fans. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel and you still didn't do this, I think you should, because more cool stuff are coming. So subscribe, hit the like button, click the notification bell, and I'll see you shortly in a new one. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.